Perhaps the most unlikely social class that would promote reform is the upper class. After all, these people are getting wealthy off the system. Why change it, right? Well, there's a division within the upper class in the late 19th, early 20th century. You see, there's a division between aristocrats, old money, guys like Teddy Roosevelt, who inherit their money, and guys like that are called plutocrats, new money, people that basically worked their way up to get all of their fortunes, right? Like Cornelius Vanderbilt. Think of it this way. Think of basically a sports team owner versus a sports, a professional athlete, right? Sports team owners, they're going to husband their money. After all, they earned it and they built it up more and more and more to the point that they could actually buy a sports team. Whereas an athlete, they've earned it, of course, through hard work and through God-given talent, but they typically don't maintain their wealth as well, right? I mean, there are some that do, but a lot of professional athletes just basically go out to nightclubs and they have good times and they just throw around money. Why? Because they can, right? So think of it that way. People during the Gilded and Progressive era, like Cornelius Vanderbilt, are infamous for throwing around their money frivolously, right? Cornelius Vanderbilt alone has one of the, if not the, largest privately owned house in the United States. They have golden, and you hear other stories like golden toilets and vacation homes with wallpapers made out of platinum, right? So the aristocrats are going to fear that these actions are of the plutocrats are going to filter back to their employees who are working their tails off, long hours, bad conditions, making pennies on the dollar compared to them, and they hear about it. They're like, wait a second, our employers are treating us in terms of our work conditions like utter garbage, yet they're living the good life. Aristocrats are really afraid that the behavior of these plutocrats is going to be basically revolutionary. So they want to reform the capitalist system, not because they're enemies of the capitalist system. After all, they're the ones that got rich off of it. But the aristocrats believe the plutocrats' actions are going to put the system in complete danger. Businessmen during this time period are also going to support reform, mainly because of the fact that they have a perception problem. The businessmen needed a way to get public confidence back into them, right? They wanted a government reform and regulation to get people to have more confidence in their products so that they could become customers once more. The Gilded Age also produced laissez-faire politics, which was supported by social Darwinism, right? Survival of the fittest. Well, in the progressive era, people began to read Darwin with a reform mindset. The most famous example of this is Lester Frank Ward in his book, Dynamic Sociology. In it, he argued that human evolution is not like the evolution in the jungle. Rather, we have minds. We can use our intelligence in order to make our environments better, right? So you can protect people, like children, from abuses, for example. That is progressive reform. We also see progressive reform in religion. Remember the Gilded Age, where in the role of religion, if you made $10,000 a year or less, and John D. Rockefeller's making $1 million, well, that's just God's plan. Well, in the progressive era, we see a religion in a different perspective, right? Basically, religion during this time period is going to be that people are going to be challenged to apply Christian ideals not just on Sundays, right? You know how it is, churchgoers. Well, unfortunately, Christian charity goes out the window the moment you go into the parking lot. Don't believe me? Try getting out of the parking lot quickly from a church, right? It's very hard, right? So the most famous example of this idea of applying Christian ideals to every day in other than including Sunday, is done by a guy named Charles Sheldon. Sheldon wrote a book called In His Steps, What Would Jesus Do? It's a fictional work in which a pastor challenges his flock to take an entire week, and before they make any decision, to sit down and think, what would Jesus do? This is kind of like what's going on during the progressive era. Big time reform, not just in the religion alone. A new idea helping to break down old ones.